Thank you so much for being here. Obviously AAC is something I'm really passionate about, Catherine's really passionate about, and we're so happy that you guys are all invested in learning about it too. In the audience tonight, we have coworkers, students, colleagues from other clinics. We have tons of family members of individuals who are either using AAC or considering using AAC. So we're going to do our best to cover a broad range of things tonight. We also are planning to spend some time at the very end to go through questions. If you have a question throughout the course of the presentation, you can go ahead and type it in the chat. Catherine and I are going to take turns kind of monitoring the chat. If it's something that we can answer right away, we'll just type away right to you and everyone can see it. If it's kind of a more in-depth question, we might save it for the end so that everyone can kind of benefit from hearing from that answer. But yeah, I'm Megan Romanczyk. I'm a speech-language pathologist working at the Boston Ability Center.
And I'm Katherine Babuka, and I'm also a speech therapist working at the Boston Ability Center.
Great. So both of us have a lot of experience working with individuals who use AAC. This presentation is going to be a little bit more geared towards pediatrics. However, if anyone has any questions specific to adults, we can definitely talk about that towards the end as well. Great. So let's talk about AAC. Let's jump right in. Awesome. So today we're going to cover a quick overview. What is AAC? We're going to talk a little bit about how do you go about obtaining an AAC device? What does the assessment and trial process look like? And then we're going to get a little bit more into the nitty gritty. So how do you determine if a device is right for your AAC user? How do you determine the vocabulary? We're going to talk about customizing the device. And then what I'm sure most of you are here for is how do you support an AAC user? What does AAC look like in therapy and home in the school? So we're going to try to cover a whole bunch of stuff. So first of all, what is AAC? It stands for augmentative and alternative communication. So augmentative basically means it supplements spoken communication. Alternative means it replaces spoken communication. So individuals may use AAC because they're not able to access their voice at all. Maybe they can intermittently access their voice. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So why would you supplement spoken communication with AAC? That may be you have decreased or inconsistent intelligibility, which basically means your speech is not understood by other people consistently. You might have inconsistent access to spoken communication due to word finding challenges, difficulties formulating what you want to say. You also may have difficulty communicating due to dysregulation. I always like to equate this to like, have you ever had a really, really long day and you're really, really hungry and it verges on like hangry and someone's like, hey, can I ask you a quick question? You're like, no, I can't think. That's kind of what dysregulation feels like. So basically your body's going through some stuff and you just can't formulate the words. So AAC can help with that too for people who feel that frequently. Also fluctuating vocal ability due to a medical condition. That might be another reason why people supplement their voice with AAC. Why would you replace communication with AAC? That would be due to an inability to functionally use spoken communication or a gradual loss of spoken communication due to progressive disabilities. I think we're all familiar with kind of ALS and how that can lead to that progressive loss of communication over time. And AAC can be really beneficial for individuals who are in that period of their lives. So AAC encompasses kind of this wide range of supports individuals may use to communicate. We all use unaided communication every day. I talk with my hands, I use my gestures, I use my facial expressions. Some individuals may use sign language or vocalizations to supplement what they're trying to communicate with their spoken language. Then there's aided AAC, which is kind of what we're talking about today. So that's non-electronic or light tech communication. On the bottom, you can see a kind of a picture of an individual using a single switch button to say what he wants to talk about. That might be, you might program yes or hi, just kind of that single message. Limited voice output or mid-tech buttons, and then robust electronic or high-tech communication systems, which we're going to dive into a little bit more today. I should say, sorry, light tech, that can encompass kind of like things that still are technology, so like those buttons, but then also kind of like picture exchange, that kind of thing. Okay, so who may benefit from AAC? AAC is a form of assistive technology with the aim of improving daily living and quality of life for individuals with communication disabilities. So any individual who cannot consistently and reliably communicate with spoken communication can benefit. AAC can be used in the short term and in the long term. It doesn't prevent spoken communication development. So that's a big question we get a lot of the times. If we're working with an individual, we say, we think they could benefit from AAC. We often hear, well, does that mean my kid will never talk? No, AAC is a support. So it might supplement spoken communication as someone's developing spoken communication. They may use AAC. It may be something that they use intermittently, or it may end up being something that's really helpful long-term. So why would you introduce AAC? Improved independence, autonomy, and decision-making in communications, improved relationships, improved understanding from communication partners, decreased communication breakdowns, and better communication with less familiar communication partners. So if you imagine someone who's inconsistently or unreliably be able to use their voice, if they find themselves in an emergency situation, having a medical emergency, it's really important that they have consistent access to share what they need to share with other people. Great. Okay, so now we're going to jump into how do you get an AAC device? How does that even start? So there are 3 ways to obtain an AAC device. We've got private pay, school district, or insurance. If you have a child who's looking to obtain an AAC device, a child or a teenager. There's pros and cons to each option, so it's important to choose what works best for your family. We're going to dive into that a little bit. So if you're going the private pay route, this can be wonderful in terms of getting immediate access to an AAC application on a mainstream hardware, so iPad or Android tablet. Your family can be really involved in choosing the best fit for your child. There are drawbacks, however, so you would be responsible then for the full cost of the AAC device if you choose the private pay route. Robust apps range from $50 to $250. And then there also may be reduced guidance or support in kind of navigating how to implement the device. That being said, your treating clinician can support the programming and implementation. So that's route number 1, private pay. Next, you could go through your school district. So if your child is enrolled in school, this can be a great option because there's going to be no cost to you. And the school is going to be super involved in the AAC assessment and implementation piece. So you've got kind of a whole team of people already really familiar with your child, kind of helping them out. Some drawbacks to that option is the family may be less involved in the decision-making process, whereas through private pay, you're kind of collaborating and picking the device that works best for your child. With the school, it kind of depends. You may have a little bit less kind of control over that situation. Schools may also require that the device stay at school, or the child may lose access to the device once they graduate. Another thing is that some schools will use a device first model. So we're going to talk a little bit about picking an AAC system that works best for your child or the AAC user. Some classrooms may say, okay, everyone in the classroom is using this software, let's just use that software. Not necessarily saying that's a bad thing, it just might not be the best fit for your child or individual AAC user. And lastly, we can go through insurance. So the pros to this option are there's a possible reduced cost depending on your insurance provider. There's increased vendor support for training on how to use the device, and there's a warranty and tech support available through the device vendor. However, it's a very formalized process. It requires an evaluation, trial, and a wait time to receive a dedicated device. This is probably the slowest option for getting a communication device. Insurance may also deny the initial request, and then there's more wait time for an appeal. So insurance is great in terms of there may be low to no out-of-pocket cost for you, and there's a ton of support through this process. However, it might just take longer than going on one of the other routes. Okay, so what does that process look like? You've decided which route you want to take. Now, what do you do? So if you're going through private pay, you don't need to do an AAC assessment. However, it may be helpful to do a free device trial before purchasing a device to make sure it's a good fit. If you're going to pay out of pocket, you want to make sure it's something that's really working. So you can trial a device for private purchase. AAC applications with free trials are a great opportunity if you already have an iPad or a tablet at home, because then it's completely free. You can have it for about 30 days. You can try it out, see if you like it, no cost to you. So we're going to dive in a little bit more into some of these apps, but as you can see, they range from like $50 to $250 after a trial, but they're free to trial. You can also do a loaner program. So if you don't have an iPad or a tablet at home, you can also get a loaner one through any of these organizations, and you can check them out to get some more information, but they all serve Massachusetts. Okay, if you decide to go through insurance, an evaluation and a trial process is required. You will not be able to fund a device through insurance without an evaluation and a trial. So it's important to call your insurance provider before starting this process to determine your coverage. Not every insurance provider will cover augmentative and alternative communication devices. So you don't want to start this whole process only to find out that it's not even covered. So it's just a simple step. Call your insurance provider and say, what's my plan's coverage for durable medical equipment? So AAC kind of falls in that category. You find out what your coverage is, and then you can weigh the pros and cons, the cost of an iPad plus an app, or insurance coverage of a more dedicated device. And we're going to kind of talk about those differences later too. If you want to do an insurance-funded assessment, there's a bunch of places that do it in Massachusetts. I'm just listing some. This isn't comprehensive. So there's Spalding, Boston Children's, ICCD, Easter Seals, and North Shore, just to name a few. And that's kind of companies that we've worked with in the past. Then you're going to do a trial. So the goal of evaluation is to recommend a device. Then the next step is to try to find out if the device is a good fit. So the evaluating clinician is responsible for requesting a device for a trial. A trial is typically 30 to 60 days. And a trial basically means you're using the device at home, at school, in the community, and seeing how your AAC user does with it. Is it working for them? Is it not working for them? Do you think maybe something else would be better? So that's your time to kind of just explore. It's free. You're just figuring out whether or not it's a good fit. The speech therapist is responsible for documenting the individual's progress with the device, and then the SLP will submit the evaluation and results of the trial to insurance for a device approval. So through this process, you're really supported. You've got the evaluating team, your treating clinician, they're all helping you out, making sure that this device is a good fit. It's a long process, but it's a very supported process. And then finally, you can fund a device through your school. So to fund a device through the school district, an evaluation is typically required. You can talk to your school, your child's IEP team to find out like what that process looks like specific to your school. So for a school-based assessment, if you're enrolled in the school, you can speak to your child's IEP team requesting an AAC evaluation. If you're not yet enrolled in school, if your child is not yet at school, you can contact the special ed department of your district to request an IEP evaluation, including an AAC assessment. So this might be for individuals who are under 3 and they're going into the school district. And so you kind of want to get the ball rolling in that sense. So schools are required to complete an evaluation when requested under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. The school may contract with an AAC or an AT specialist if they don't feel like they're equipped to do the evaluation, but they are required to give you this evaluation if that's something you're seeking. So just so you know your rights there. Great, and then you can trial the device through your school. So the school will provide trial equipment funded by the school or the state. The device is purchased through school funding, and then progress is determined through IEP goals. I think that's it. Yeah, I'll hand it over to you, Katherine.
Perfect. So once you have decided that you are going to get a device, how you're going to get that device, you're going to need to start thinking about the actual nitty-gritty of the specifics, whether that be the hardware, what the device is going to be physically on, or the software, the apps that you're going to see. AAC is not a like one size fits all, so we really need to kind of take a look at the individual, their strengths, their support needs, and there's almost like seemingly endless options for you to go through. So to start off with, it's important to kind of take a peek at the hardware that your device is going to be. So like Megan said, that there's kind of 2 choices. There's the iPad or Android or maybe even Amazon device. This is definitely the more affordable and accessible options. However, it's typically not covered by insurance. So this is something that you can get, you may already have in your possession, or you can kind of go get from like Target or Amazon. Many of the softwares can be downloaded on this app, many if not all. And then it's typically iOS based. So if there is a problem, it's if you are familiar with the iOS program or Android program, it's going to be easy to problem solve. And then the other option is a dedicated AAC device. So these are oftentimes more durable. They are Also have compatibility for eye gaze and or head mouse. So if you have an individual with limited mobility and are unable to use your finger or arm to activate the device, this can be something that you can look into. And these are definitely more expensive, but are oftentimes covered by insurance. All right, so there are definitely some things that you need to consider when looking at the hardware. It's important to kind of look at the strengths and the support needs in a variety of different areas. So to start with, the actual physical abilities of the AAC user or the child. This could look like adding either switch access or eye gaze to the device. So this, if your child or young adult or adult is unable to use their body in a way that to use your finger to activate, you can do things such as switch access. So Megan showed earlier a picture of a button, a single button. There's that. There's also switch scanning. So you can have two different buttons, one that will kind of scroll through the column and one that will scroll through the row in order to find the specific button that you're looking for. And then eye gaze is using your eyes to kind of look at the device, and then you can activate it that way. You also need to kind of take a peek at vision, whether the device has the capacity to use high contrast images, motor planning skills. Something that you may want to look into is a key guard to help with reducing mishits. I'll show a picture next. And then additionally, tone. So your child, whether they're low tone, high tone, the position of the actual physical device, whether that be needing to be positioned on a wheelchair, up on a table, whether the iPad needs to be physically standing or if it can be laid down. So these are some considerations that you're going to want to look out for or make sure that your SLP is looking out for. All right, and then here are a few specific examples of these aided access options. So like I said, the switch access, that's what this picture up here attached to the wheelchair is. This is set up so that a AAC user can use their head to access both of the buttons if they are unable to consistently use their hands or their fingers. Directly below that is a picture of a keyboard attached to an iPad or an AAC device. And like I said, this will help with eliminating or reducing mishits. So if a child or a adult is looking to select something, but maybe their tone isn't as great or their accuracy isn't as great, this is kind of like a little divot that will help the person hit the specific button that they're intending to. Directly next to that is a wheelchair mount. So this is so that if a person is using a wheelchair, they don't have to rely on a caregiver to hold the device or for it to be in the backpack the majority of the day because no one is there to hold the device. This allows for a person to have their device with them wherever they need to go. And then directly above that is one of the newer examples of an aided access option in the field right now. This is called a NeuroNode. And this can be helpful for individuals who are maybe recovering from a spinal cord injury. They have more restrictions when it comes to movement. And this is activating the specific muscle group. And this can be like the slightest of electrical impulses that activate. So kind of a widespread of different modifications that can be added to each device in order to support any and all communication partners. All right, next, after we've kind of taken a peek at the actual hardware and the supports that come with those, we need to take a peek at the software or the actual application that you are looking to install on the device for communication. Here is a absolutely not comprehensive list of all the applications, but some of the more common ones that we have come across in contact with. However, like I said, it's definitely not comprehensive. There are endless software apps out there. These are just ones that we've seen more often than not. All right. And like there was considerations with the hardware, there's also considerations with the software. So things to kind of keep an eye out for is whether the software or the application uses a motor plan in their development. So this, if a iPad has a whole bunch of language on it, you want to make sure that the language that is the same word is in the same spot each time. So just how you and I are using our words, our mouth, our lips, our tongue to communicate, and it's automatic. I don't have to think about putting my mouth in a certain position. We want our AAC users to not have to think about where they're accessing their specific words. So if a word is in one place, like let's say the word orange for the fruit and orange for the color, it's still the same word, so we want it to be in the same spot. So that's maintaining a motor plan to kind of make that automatic and more intuitive. Or next, we want to take a peek at the grid size. Kind of a rule of thumb for us is that we want the grid size to be as large as possible to cover as much vocabulary as possible while considering vision and fine motor skills. So what this means is that where the device is, we want as many buttons to be on there as possible to be able to encompass as much vocabulary as possible. We also want to take a peek at how customization is in the device. We want to take a peek at the ease and the extent to which a device can be personalized. Like I said, AAC is not a one size fits all. So we kind of want to make sure that it's able to be personalized, having a page that is for personalized jokes, or a page that's all about me, or sayings that I say a lot. We also want to take a peek at the extra supports that each of these apps offers, whether that be a training module, a website to refer back to, lesson plans revolving around specific communication intents, or accessibility features, whether that be connecting to Siri or Alexa, being able to call 911 in emergencies, things of that nature. Additionally, taking a peek at the diversity and representation in the actual icons. So where you're talking about people or jobs, not just having the same exact icon for each person. And then lastly, taking a peek at code switching. So if you are if your AAC user is bilingual, you definitely want to make sure that your communication device and the program that you use has an easier way of switching between languages. So whether that just be the click of a button switching from English to Spanish versus having to go in the settings, toggle something on, change this, change that, and then it switches language. So easy for code switching and ease of accessibility between the languages. All right, so what makes the AAC system robust? Megan had mentioned earlier that we definitely want to look for the AAC systems that are robust. So robust means that there is room for vocabulary growth. It has thoughtful organization, supports all area of language, access to alphabet and word prediction, the option for pre-programmed language and customization, and has the option for electronic and non-electronic versions. We found this quote that seems to kind of summarize this pretty well, saying being able to say what I want to say to whomever I want to say it to, whenever I want to say it, and however I choose to say it. So being able to have an AAC system that allows for that communication regardless of the situation. So being able to make sure that all of these things are included in the software that you choose. So kind of to reiterate my point, why go robust? Because robust allows for unlimited vocabulary from when you're 5 years old until you're 45 years old, being able to kind of use the same system to communicate the purposes that you would be communicating at 5 years old, 45 years old in the grocery store, at home, and customizing any and all messages. Having access to word prediction and the keyboard is important, and then also that maintenance of the motor plan. If you're looking at a system that is not robust, oftentimes it has limited vocabulary and it takes a lot to add additional vocabulary. Along with that, it's typically unable to change word forms or more difficult to change word forms. So if it's a piece of paper, having to add an additional piece of paper to change run to ran. And then also a lot of the times this on not robust systems is exclusive to requests. So not being able to necessarily communicate feelings or tell jokes. And if you're thinking about a communication book, which is not robust, the space is limited. You don't want to carry around like 2 encyclopedias worth of words and communication intents. So definitely robust is what we are looking for when recommending or making a decision on the specific software. All right. In terms of time, I'll probably go a little bit quickly through these, but we did want to look at a few of the more common AAC programs that we see and just kind of take a deeper look at each of them. So to start off with here, we have LAMP, Words for Life. And this is the language acquisition motor planning. So this is definitely a robust system, and it has a very consistent motor plan. It's kind of in the name there, motor plan. And this specific system, it has 84 buttons, no matter the type of vocabulary you choose. So with other systems, if you choose different vocabularies, the grid size will change. This is set in stone. You can like hide buttons, you can change buttons, but you're unable to change the actual grid size of this program. LAMP comes with English and Spanish as options, and this one does have a pretty easy toggle back and forth. And then the supports that it comes with is access to the AAC Language Lab, which has modules, training videos, articles, helpful tips, and all sorts of good information on this online portal. Next, we have Touch Chat. This is, again, all of these ones that I'll be showing you are robust systems. Touch Chat is customizable in its vocabulary. So there's a few different ones. Ones that I most often use are the word power vocab, the multi-chat vocab, and the quick chat vocab. There's a few others. However, I don't personally use them. I'm sure that other SLPs have more experience with the other vocabulary, and then also with different populations. So this also has the motor plan function where each of the words are located in the same position. This one comes in a few more languages: English, Spanish, French, Hebrew, Arabic, and Canadian French. And one cool thing about Touch Chat in particular is that there's access to a whiteboard feature on this. So let's say your AAC user is having trouble describing a word and they're not finding it on their iPad. They're able to kind of either write it out, draw it out, do any other type of drawing or writing on their specific AAC device. Next up is TD Snap, the core and motor plan. So the motor plan version of this is relatively new. I believe it came out last year in the US, I think a little bit before that in the UK, but it is, again, robust and customizable. So TD Snap Core comes in a wide variety of grid sizes. I think the smallest is 4 buttons on the page, and the biggest is up to 80 some. With the motor plan, there's 2 options. There's the 30 and the 66. So this one showing on the screen right here is the 30. And then there's one bigger, which we would obviously recommend if your child is able to with their vision and fine motor planning. This also, in the name again, follows a strong motor plan system. So all the words are in the same place. And this comes in a wide variety of languages. I won't read those all, but there's a lot more. Some cool features that come with TD Snap is access to board maker supports. Again, a whiteboard, core first learning, which is modules and training videos and lesson plans based on words or communication intents. There's visual schedules and timers on here. So there's a lot of supports that come with this TD SNAP program. All right, and then two more. This one is Proloquo to Go. This one, again, robust, customizable, and follows a motor plan. It comes in English, Spanish, Dutch, and French. And then the supports that come along with Proloquo to Go include assistive wear online training. So it's pretty obvious that a lot of these are very similar in that they all are robust, customizable, follow a motor plan, come in a variety of languages, and then have some sort of support. It is important for you to kind of test out some of them. All of their icons and the visuals are slightly different. So where your child might be more receptive to one over the other, it's just kind of important to take a peek at a wide variety of them and see which ones fit your child the best. And then lastly is Cough Drop. This is similar to the others in that it's robust, customizable, and follows a motor plan. This one is different in that it uses Google Translate to translate existing boards. So it's a little bit more difficult to use in a bilingual child because you have to specifically go to the settings and then translate the existing board. It can also, one of the assistance that come with this program is that it you can have the supervisor access.
Sorry about that.
No worries. So where you can have a child's device, you can also have under the same account a supervisor. So you can create goals and badges for the AAC user to practice using their device in a different way than the other programs. All right, so we wanted to kind of just do a quick little case study to walk through the process of what it looks like to choose a device and the program. So what we went with was Alex is a 5-year-old boy with cerebral palsy. He just started kindergarten in the fall. At this time, he's predominantly communicating with vocalizations, gestures, and head nodding and shaking to answer questions. Important considerations that we thought in this case was that his limited mobility, he is a wheelchair user, and that he has difficulty with that finger isolation. He's also bilingual. So they decided to go through insurance because he will need a few of these additional supports, such as a wheelchair mount and 2 switches. So this family was not quite ready to have to get all of these supports through private pay. And then with going through the school, they didn't want to have to return it in the fall if that was what the school went with. So they just wanted to be able to get it through the insurance. So it was theirs throughout the year until he was aged out and beyond. They decided on the program of TD SNAP because of the following, that it was a motor-based program. They liked that they were able to quickly toggle between English and Spanish for that code switching. They liked the access to the quick fires, alphabet, and connection to Alexa and Siri. And they thought it was really easy to customize. And at the end, Alex just really seemed to like this particular device or this particular program and was using it and seemed most excited about it. So that is just a little case study that we thought through.
Awesome. Okay, now we're going to get a little bit into customizing the device. So basically you've picked your program, you've figured out you have your hardware, you have your software, and now you want to make sure it really is your AAC user's voice. It's true to them. It's reflective of their identity, their culture. So how do you customize it? First and foremost, you've got a team. So your programming support team includes your speech therapist. Pretty much every AAC software has like a Facebook group where you could say like, hey, I'm a little bit confused about how to do this, and someone's already been there before. Your local AAC software representative, and there's also free online training specific to any AAC software. So if you're not sure where to start, go to one of those. If you decide to get TD Snap, Touch Chat, or Lamp Words for Life, there's people who I can vouch for respond to email within 24 hours. They're wonderful. Jean and Jennifer I've worked with in the past, and if you email them and say like, hey, I'm a little bit confused how to program this, they'll hop on a Zoom call, they'll come to your house. They're awesome. So just to know that there are some really great supports out there, so you're not alone through figuring this out. So here's some general principles for device programming. We've talked about this a lot. Me and Catherine feel really passionate about using larger grid sizes, because basically, if we think about it, if you have a message that you want to communicate to someone, it's instantaneous. You think of something and immediately goes to your mouth. AAC, it's inherently a little bit slower, and so we want to make it as efficient as possible. The bigger the grid size, the more words that are there immediately. You already have access to like 60, 70, 80 words right in front of you. And then it's quicker to access all of the additional vocabulary that lives on other pages. So use larger grid sizes when motorically and visually appropriate to optimize access. Sometimes a smaller grid size will make access easier for an individual. And so that's kind of where the assessment and trial comes in to figure that out. But when in doubt, larger grid sizes are great. Avoid hiding icons as you're programming a device, with few exceptions. So basically, if we think about typical language development, individuals are pretty much exposed to unlimited vocabulary in the way their parents talk to them, classmates, friends, people in the community, they hear words. And so basically they have access to an unlimited vocabulary. We want their AAC device to be the same. We want them to have unlimited access to words. The few exceptions could be sometimes individuals will say like, okay, we want to really help them develop this kind of like motor plan of how to get to this word. So maybe in the short term, just during the course of a therapy session, we're kind of like hiding the other icons so they really get this sort of like motor plan down, like let's go to whatever it may be that they're saying. With the exception of that, for the most part, we recommend kind of keeping all of the icons available for your AAC user. Another principle for device programming is support communication in the present, but also plan for the future. So for example, if you were to get an AAC device and you said, okay, I have a 3-year-old right now, and their favorite thing in the whole wide world is Paw Patrol. So I'm going to clear their entire home screen and just make it all the Paw Patrol characters. Well, that might be really meaningful to your child now, but let's say they're still using this AAC device when they're 16. Probably don't want a million Paw Patrol characters. It's probably important to them to have all that vocabulary that was originally programmed into their device. So supporting communication in the present, still definitely program all of the words, all of your kids' favorite toys and activities and the important people in their lives, but don't program over the words that are already existing there, because eventually your kid's going to want access to them. Your kid may be communicating with single words now, but maybe they're going to be speaking in sentences and having whole conversations in the future. So that's kind of just a general principle to think about. Maintain the motor plan. We've said that 500 times, so it's important. You want to make sure that if like a button on the home screen links to another page, you don't want to necessarily change that. You want to make it as easy and as efficient for an individual to access their vocabulary as possible. So if you program a word and then you decide, actually, maybe it goes better in this folder, or I'm going to move it over here, it kind of gets confusing. So as much as possible, program something once and leave it. Don't touch it. Maintain the motor plan. So once the kid learns where it is, it stays. I don't know if anyone's ever like tried to clean up their phone and they're deleting apps and folders on their phone, and then you go to call someone, you're like, where the heck did that icon go? It's the same thing with AAC. So you kind of, it becomes automatic. You remember, like, this is how I say that word, this is how I get to this kind of phrase or sentence that I want to build. And if you move it around, it just becomes more challenging. And then add personalized vocabulary. This will become the AAC users an extension of their voice. They may use spoken communication in conjunction with AAC, or they may only use AAC, but regardless, it's a part of them, it's a part of their identity. And so you want to make sure you have like important people in their lives, things that they want to talk about, activities they want to share about, places they want to go. Okay. So I'm going to chat a little bit today about, because we got a few questions about like the difference between analytic and gestalt language processors. If you're not sure what we're talking about, basically these next few slides are kind of just talking about individuals who have more typical traditional language development. So analytical language processors are those kiddos who will be kind of building up one word at a time. So maybe their first word was mama, and then they said, hi, mama. And then they said, hi, mama, let's go. So pretty like traditional, typical language development. That's what these few slides are geared towards. So a few just basic considerations: avoid making changes to the homepage. So all of the softwares that Catherine was chatting about, so when she was talking about LAMP Words for Life, Touch Chat, TD Snap, they've been developed in research to try to make access to communication as efficient as possible. And so the homepage is going to have words like I, me, like, get, no, don't, stop, more, words that we use every day, a whole bunch. And so we want to avoid making changes to that homepage because that's kind of like efficient access to those high frequency words. And those words will often link to another folder. So if we change the homepage, then we kind of change the structure of the device. And then we also want to program single words on relevant pages. So for example, names of family members go under the people page. So if an individual wants to talk about, like, they might say hi and then go to the people page and find like the teacher that they want to say hi to, instead of programming over the homepage. So I'll show some examples of what that looks like. So I think in the audience actually is a teacher of an individual who's using this program. So this will look very familiar to you. This is TD Snap with Motor Plan 66. So this is what the homepage looks like. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying not programming over the homepage, because we've got a lot of this core vocabulary, being able to very quickly say yes or no, or very quickly to be able to say, I like it, or stop that. You can say a ton with just these symbols that are on that main page. So let's say, for example, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm going to personalize this screen here. So if you go to the home page, I'm going to go to these quick fires, and that's going to be a separate folder that has some personal information. So in the quick fires, I said, hi, my name's Megan. I work at the Boston Ability Center. My favorite color is blue. My favorite food is jelly beans. And so then I can kind of quickly access these things that I want to share with other people. Here's another example. I went into the snacks and sweets page and I realized my favorite food wasn't there. So I had to program the word jelly beans. So all of this vocabulary was already here under snacks and sweets. And then I kind of just added this additional vocabulary word because I know that I probably talk about jelly beans at least once a day. So it's important for me to have this programmed into my device. Another example is, here's the community places page on TD Snap. All of these icons were already here, but one of my favorite places to go hiking is Blue Hills Reservation. So I added that right there, so that if I'm talking to someone, they said, hey, where'd you go this weekend? I can kind of quickly access it because I know it's a word or like a place that I talk about a lot. And programming this, really, really easy. It's like 3 buttons and you upload the image. It's already all kind of like set in the device. So for example, if I want to program a photo, you can just like take a photo straight from the app. I just took a selfie to put my picture in there. Or you can also use a preloaded symbol. So if you type the word jelly beans, that was the picture that came up. I also could have taken a picture. Super duper easy. There's like 2-minute YouTube videos that teach you how to do it. Awesome. Okay. So now this is considerations for Gestalt language processors. For those of you who don't know, these are people who develop language a little bit differently than kind of that typical progression of like 1 word to 2 words to 3 words. This is individuals who may have been described as using echolalia or scripting, individuals who are attuned to kind of larger chunks of language and may benefit from an AAC system that reflects that larger chunk of language. So individuals who are kind of in that first stage of development, when they're using a whole chunk of language to indicate what they want to say, we're going to want to program that entire chunk of language, that entire gestalt, based on their communication intention. So for example, I have a student that I work with who, if he is upset, he will say, when you feel so mad that you want to roar, which is a quote from Daniel Tiger. And that basically means he's sad or he's mad, and he'll use that whole script to communicate how he's feeling. So I would go ahead and I would upload that entire script under the feelings page. I wouldn't delete the single word mad, but rather I'd program the gestalt in another location on the page. In this stage, you'd also want to consider the intonation or the rhythm of the speech. So what we haven't really talked about a whole lot in terms of customizing the device is the voice output. So anyone who's used an AAC device in the past, you might hear it can sound a little bit like Siri. And so it can sound a little bit robotic. So if I say, hey, how's it going on an AAC device, it might sound, hey, how's it going? devices are getting better. The voice output is getting like a lot more natural sounding. But that being said, for an individual who's really attuned to kind of the rhythm of speech, an individual who uses echolalia, they might want something that sounds more authentic to speech. So you might program the original audio or video into the AAC device. You can also program recorded speech rather than synthesized speech to capture the intonation. So I'll give you an example of that. So I have a friend who uses, or a kid, I call my friend, but I have a kid I work with who uses Words for Life. And so this is kind of what the home screen looks like. He's a Gestalt language processor. And so I didn't touch the home screen at all. The home screen stays the same. However, when I went into this feelings page, this is what the feelings page looks like. So if you go to the word feel on Words for Life, it takes you to this page. And so you can say feel happy or feel silly or feel mad. So what I did is I programmed this, this video. So basically when you click on this button, it plays that original video clip from YouTube, and it's Daniel Tiger singing "When You Feel So Mad That You Want to Roar." And it's his way of communicating to people, I'm feeling really angry right now, or I'm feeling upset. So here are some more examples. So I went into a page that reflects like, I like it. So we went from the home page to the page that has kind of the communication intention of I like it. And he has a video that he likes to watch that says, "This is the best bulldozer in the whole city." And he'll play that video to indicate like, I really like this. This is super fun. Same thing, if he bumps into something or he feels hurt, he'll say, "That hurt," or "I don't feel so good." And again, like using that kind of whole chunk of language to indicate how he wants to feel. So I think the most important thing to notice is I'm not deleting the original word. Instead, I'm programming kind of those chunks of language adjacent to the original word, because the goal is to eventually help individuals kind of break that language down and kind of be able to create more like generative language. I'll skip ahead. So here's some more examples on Touch Chat. Here's the home screen. Here's what the food page looks like. And then I have a little friend who, when he's hungry, he'll sing the like, "I like to eat, eat, eat" song to say I'm hungry. And so we programmed basically someone's voice kind of singing that song into the device. Another thing is when he's feeling happy, he'll sing "If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands." So we programmed that, again, not going over the original button. We want to maintain the motor plan, but just adding an additional button that links to the video. Awesome. Okay, for stage 2, language processors. So this is individuals who are starting to break that chunk of language down. You want to program those mitigations. So program ways to break that language down. So mitigations can be programmed adjacent to the original Gestalt. You don't delete the original Gestalt. So I'll go back here. So here's Daniel Tiger singing "When You Feel So Mad That You Want to Roar." Then I added a button that says "When you feel so," and then "that you want to." So the original Gestalt is "When you feel so mad that you want to roar." And now we can say "When you feel so happy that you want to laugh." So we can kind of start modifying and breaking down that original language. Next stage is stage 3, individuals who communicate primarily using echolalia, these Gestalt language processors. As you move into stage 3 in their development, you're going to model single words on the device. So you'll program single words that are important to your AAC user. So like I said originally, like people, favorite games, favorite foods, places that they want to travel. And then as you move into stage 4, it's just going to be typical language interventions. So you're going to be modeling word combinations and grammar and syntax, all that good stuff on the device. Awesome. All right, Catherine, I'll send it over to you.
All right. So now we're going to get into some strategies for supporting your specific AAC user. So first is the s'mores method. I don't know about you, but who doesn't love a good food analogy? This always just makes me hungry thinking about it and brings me joy. So the first step of s'mores in supporting your AAC user or your AAC learner is speak with a slow rate. So you don't want to sound robotic and you don't want to speed through. So you want to speak with a slow, purposeful, yet natural voice. The MO in s'mores is model. So you want to model language everywhere. You want to do a variety of different language. So self-talk, kind of narrating what you're doing as you're hanging out with your AAC user. Parallel talk, so kind of commenting and narrating what they're doing. And then commenting on the environment around you with the variety of people. So kind of everywhere and everything, talk about what's going on and model the language that is going on around you. The first R of s'mores is respect and reflect. This is where you want to provide the words to what you believe the communication intent is without making them repeat it. So let's say your AAC user is kind of gesturing over to the pantry. You can provide the words of, I'm hungry, without saying, all right, now say hungry on your device, or say hungry, sign hungry. So you want to respect their communication intent, reflecting by providing the language. Next R is repeat, and you want to kind of repeat the utterances throughout the day. So kind of similar with model, you're going to repeat the same kind of language throughout the day across environments with different communication partners. You're going to want to say it's time to go in the car, in the mall, on your way to school, kind of just everywhere and everything again. The E is expand. So kind of the 1+ rule that I'm sure you've heard a lot of speech therapists talk about. So whatever your child or AAC user uses on their device, or maybe with their verbal language, just adding a 1 to 2 words to that. So let's say they say ball on their device, or verbally say the word ball, adding brown ball, or adding big brown ball, something along the lines of that. And then the last S in s'mores is to stop. Silence is really important in working on language because it provides time for the AAC user to respond. It provides time for them to think about what they want to say, kind of absorb that language without feeling the pressure to do it in that very instant. Another way that we support our AAC users is through aided language stimulation. This is something that's really important because we shouldn't be expecting an AAC user to automatically learn how to know, or excuse me, an AAC user to know how to use their AAC device, or to kind of discern what the pictures mean, what the word mean, without teaching the system. So it's important for the communication partner, you or I, to use the AAC system in order to learn the language system. So what this looks like is think about how I learn language is that everyone is talking around me using verbal language. For an AAC user, they're maybe at home hearing the verbal language, and they're not seeing their AAC system being used. There shouldn't be any expectation for the AAC user to imitate or respond. That putting that pressure on an AAC user may oftentimes be negative reinforcer if all the time people are quizzing them like, oh, where's red on your device, or tell me red. It could potentially be more negative than helpful. And then lastly with this is that it's important to model making mistakes, correcting mishits, and thinking out loud the process of finding the words and phrases. So if you're looking at the device and you're like, I'm thinking the word bug might be under animal. Let's look, animal, bug, spider. Oh, we found it. Or if you make a mistake, like, oops, let's go back. Let's try that again, or something like that. And then there's also this video that Megan showed me that has a really great description of what I just explained and shows a cute little visual along. So you'd like to play it?
Just make sure I'm sharing sound. Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Let's do it.
created using Powtoon.
So I think a really great thing that this video showed is that they weren't just using Josie language at speech therapy or at school. They're using it at the grocery store, in the car, with mom, with dad, with brother. So they're using it kind of all throughout the environments, so that she's able to learn this new language system. All right. And then another way for helping AAC users is to ensure that we're using the AAC device and teaching the AAC device to do things beyond requesting. I know that it's really easy to first steps use the AAC device to request things that are maybe motivating or things that the child or AAC user really likes. However, there's so many different ways to communicate beyond requesting, such as sharing opinions, commenting, initiating, terminating conversation, telling a joke, participating in imaginative play, indicating discomfort or pain, gaining attention. So these are all different ways that we can use the device, model on the device, model with verbal speech, to communicate beyond just the simple requesting of I want, blah, blah, blah. All right, and then just some additional helpful tips to ensure that you're remembering that all forms of communication are valid. We should be treating these devices as the user's voice. So taking away the device, turning it off, covering the screen, it's all variations of taking an AAC user's voice away. We wouldn't be kind of putting our hand over someone who uses verbal speech if they are being disruptive, so we're not going to cover the screen. We just need to be careful that we're treating these devices as a voice, because it is kind of an extension of their body, of their voice, of their personality. And then lastly, as often as possible, it's important to honor the communication intent instead of requiring the AAC user to use their device to communicate. So even if they're using their verbal speech, if you're working on the communication device and you're wanting them to do something on that, making sure that even if they do something different, it's okay. It's okay to use different forms of communication, gesturing, shaking their head no instead of saying no on the device, using body language. All forms of communication are valid. All right, and here are some ways to be an advocate for your communication partner, someone who is an AAC user. Ensure that their voice and their device is on, out, and charged at all times, whether that be at home, at school, at the playground, in the car. And then also to be able to provide low-tech options. So if you're engaging in messy play, if you're at the pool, if for some reason you lost the charger or there's some kind of tech failure or the device breaks, it's important to have a low-tech option for the child to use. So this could look like in this middle page, we have some laminated pages that they'd be able to use, some of those core home words. Some other things that we found is maybe if you're in the pool, doing a laminated sheet on a pool noodle or a flipper to be able to communicate in the water. Another cool thing is temporary tattoo, which is just really cool and I think would be really fun. Or having a backup option on the cloud to maybe use on another iPad that you have at home, or screenshots to use on a phone, things like that. Additional ways to be an advocate for your AAC user is to encourage using the device in a low pressure environment without constantly quizzing these kids. Making exploration of the device and the connection between communication partners fun, and motivating and enjoyable for all involved. Additionally, we're going to be providing you guys with some handouts afterwards via email, and eventually we'll probably put it on the website at some point, but we are going to talk to you about the Communication Bill of Rights. And then also another really helpful resource is the AAC Resource Roundup by Emily Diaz. And this is a multi-page document that has Instagram accounts to follow, or YouTube videos to watch, or Facebook groups to be a part of, like Megan mentioned earlier, with each specific program. Just a whole bunch of different things to kind of learn more from AAC users or people that work with AAC users. So like I said, the Communication Bill of Rights is definitely something that is really important to make sure that we are maintaining throughout our experience with our AAC users. This is the really wordy Communication Bill of Rights that ASHA, the American Hearing and Speech Association, put on their website. However, it's actually while looking at that, it's really complicated. And a lot of people, caregivers, parents, friends of AAC users may not be able to actually understand all of those words in the jumbled, potentially complicated way. So another option that we have are these Communication Bill of Rights with visuals and more simplistic words. So examples are, I have the right to make my own real choice. I have the right to be treated with respect and dignity, to be spoken with, not about, to share my feelings, to say no, refuse, and reject choices. So these are just really important things to keep in the back of our mind while we're working with all different communicators. And then lastly, to wrap it up, we wanted to provide you guys with some media that represents AAC users to be able to show to your AAC user, or maybe your classroom, or your other children that interact with your AAC user. So examples of some books that have AAC users in them are A Day with No Words, A Voice of Her Own, and Eddie the Elephant. But there's so many different books out there. If you just kind of look up AAC books or books that talk about AAC users. Some TV shows. Speechless is a show on ABC, I believe, that is more of like a young adult show that includes a AAC user. And then Ada Twist is a show on Netflix for kids, and her brother uses a device. So that's something that a little bit more kid friendly. And then additionally, some toys that you can do that represent AAC users. Over here, we have a baby doll with a little AAC device. And then you can get a little one for a little toy figurine or an action figure. I think you can look on Etsy for them, and they're like $5 and they're really cute. But just maybe having in the classroom some AAC devices for the dolls to use, or with your own personal toy collection at home. Just making it more representative of all different types of communicators.
Awesome. So that kind of ends the presentation portion. We have plenty of time for questions. Like I said, I'm Megan. This is Katherine, and we're here to help through the process. So we're so glad you joined. If you can stick around for questions, that'd be great. If you've got to log off, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you being here. I'm going to stop my share. Great. Okay, and I'm going to take a look at the chat because it looks like there were a couple of questions there. Let's see. Oh, this was a good question. Okay. Modeling on the AAC device, whether you should be modeling on the individual's AAC device, or if you should be modeling on like a separate device. I think that's a great question. In an ideal world, you are modeling on a separate device. However, that is very often not feasible, particularly for families. So if you are a speech therapist and educator, and you have kind of the financial means, or the means through your company or facility that you're kind of modeling separately, so you've got your own LAMP Words for Life page, and then the individual you're working with has their own LAMP Words for Life page, that's kind of the best way to be really respectful of kind of honoring, like, this is this individual's device, this is an extension of their voice, and this is for them, and we kind of have our separate thing. That is almost never the case if you're working at home, and that's okay. Like, we really want to make sure that this is as accessible as possible to people. So if you're kind of modeling on the individual's actual device as kind of like a parent, a caregiver, or an educator, if you don't have access to a separate iPad, that is okay. The important thing is that we're just kind of supporting that communication development. So thanks for that question. Let's see. Okay. Someone asked this question: if you're adding to a page that exists with everything in alphabetical order, should you move things to keep them in alphabetical order or add it to an empty button so the familiarity muscle memory stays the same? Hopefully I'll address the specifics of your question, and then if I'm not understanding you right, feel free to rephrase it or turn your mic off. But I think whenever possible, keeping things as they exist on the page as it was originally programmed. So whatever software you pick basically is going to be kind of like heavily researched and determined by kind of what that software developer thought was kind of the most efficient way to access that vocabulary. So say maybe you like have a page that's like a bunch of mammals and your kid loves aardvarks, but aardvarks isn't on that page. That's a good question in terms of, do you shift everything over or do you just add aardvarks to the end? I haven't like thought of that specifically. And I guess yeah, like thinking about access, I'd say a lot of the times a lot of pages aren't organized alphabetically. They're more organized kind of like semantically, like by like how things relate to one another. The only times I've seen things be organized alphabetically, like on Touch Chat, for example, less frequently used like action words, for example, like zip or zap, for example, are going to be like organized alphabetically. And if that's the case and you want to add an additional word, my guess would be like leave it as it is and kind of add it on, unless you're adding a ton of words where you think it's going to be really confusing to find them. Hopefully that answers your question, Catherine. I don't know if you have different thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience as well, I've just like in your specific example, one of my friends really loved all the different kinds of dinosaurs. So, and not just like pterodactyl and T-Rex, like all like he liked the more complicated ones. So like on the specific dinosaur page, I had just added them at the end, even though those were his preferred, rather than mixing up what the pre-programmed vocabulary was. So I would agree with you.
Awesome. Okay. Looks like we answered the question. Great. Do you need an AT certification to give an AAC assessment? No, you don't. If you are qualified, if you are a speech language pathologist and you have your Cs, so basically you're credentialed, you have your license, you can give an AAC assessment. That being said, a lot of SLPs don't feel really confident giving AAC assessments just because grad school is such kind of like this, we learn so much, like it's so broad, and you go through treatment and assessment of across the lifespan, all different disorders. So a lot of people leave grad school feeling ill-equipped, and that's why people kind of pursue that further education of becoming an AT specialist and kind of really like that's all you do, that you just do AAC assessments all day, every day. If you're a speech pathologist and you're like, if you're listening as a speech pathologist and you're like, this is so interesting and I think this is what I want to do, you don't necessarily have to go back for school to it. Attending trainings, reading more books. I think I can speak for myself, and I'm pretty sure Catherine's in the same boat, where I graduated from Northeastern and I said, I really love AAC. This is really interesting to me. And so I signed up for like additional trainings whenever possible, going to free webinars and free talks, reading books, following people on Instagram, and shadowing, like reaching out to people in my network who were augmentative communication specialists and being like, can I follow you for a day? Can we hop on a Zoom call? Can I ask you some questions? So you certainly can pursue it. We all know that education is expensive, unfortunately. And so I think it's one of those things where it's a personal choice, but no, if you are a certified speech therapist, you're credentialed to give an AAC assessment. And if you're feeling less qualified, you can kind of pursue further education to help yourself feel more confident. Hopefully that answers that question too. Great. I'm looking at the chat. And then after I kind of go through the chat, we can open it up if people want to unmute themselves, ask questions. A question specific to Gestalt language processors. What do you do if you're going to program a gestalt into a specific page, but there's no more space because they have a lot of gestalts? That's a great question. So a few options. When we talk about jumping from pages, so for those of you who are less familiar with working with individuals who use AAC, these robust systems, it's kind of like you're on a page, you hit a button, it jumps to another page and another page, and basically you could have unlimited pages. So one suggestion that I heard is you could have multiple pages. So say you want to program a gestalt into the feelings page and you say, oh my goodness, this kid has taken up all 84 buttons somehow. If that's the case, you can add an additional page. So you can just have 2 feelings pages. So that's one option. Yeah, I think that's probably the best option. So it's still fitting within that same like pragmatic category. I'm using speechy terms. Pragmatic just basically means like, what is the intention of what you're trying to say? So you wouldn't necessarily put words about feelings with a page that's all about food, because you would want to put like all of your feelings with like, I'm feeling, and then it jumps to that page and you could say sad, mad, happy, angry. So just trying to keep whatever your intention in communicating with other people, like sort of in that same area. And that kind of mirrors cognitive development. So we basically, like when we're like typical language development, when we're learning words, they kind of like, we map them with associated words in our brain. And so we try to set up the AAC systems in a similar way. So it kind of mirrors natural language development.